Good evening, you're with ET Now. This is the only show on Indian television that puts the spotlight on development issues. You're watching India Development Debate. I'm Sandeep Gurumurthy joining you live from our news centre in Mumbai. Joining me in Delhi is my colleague Supriya Shwini. It's straight to the big debate tonight then. At its plenary session, the Congress party has put out an alternative economic agenda which heavily criticised the Modi government for its so-called pro-rich economic policies, promises to more than double average income under rural employment guarantee scheme to 18,000 rupees a year. Interestingly, it also proposes a farm loan waiver scheme and promises to provide interest-free loans to small farmers. It says the Modi government's economic policies of shock and awe, including note ban, have severely dented business confidence, even as it has left millions of small businessmen and traders high and dry. Interestingly, the agriculture resolution presented by Amrinder Singh says the Congress, if voted to power, will impose a 5% cess on the top 1% of rich Indians to set up what it calls a national poverty alleviation fund, something that has been denied by top brass of the party, who assert it's not a part of the main economic agenda.
Indeed. Now, on our India Development Debate this evening, we had pointed out that the 2019 general elections will be fought on the farmland. The opposition parties are also likely to use the Modi government's failure to create enough quality jobs as the main slogan. Add to that the traces of growth killers like the note ban and a faulty rollout of the GST. The economic agenda has already been set out for the Modi government for the remaining 1 year in office. Will Team Modi shift the focus now to correct the anomalies in tax and economic policies? Is the alternative development model as proposed by the Congress at its plenary session based on sound economics or just a Jumla? An economic agenda for 2019, that's a big topic of discussion and debate on the India Development Debate tonight. And thank you very much to an stellar panel that's joining us right here. We've got Mr. Rajiv Gowda representing the Congress party, Amit Malviya of the BJP, R. Jagannathan, editorial director, Swarajya magazine, Gurcharan Das, author and commentator, and Swaminathan Iyer will join us shortly as well right here on the India Development Debate. So thanks each one of you for being with us. And Jaggi, I'll begin with you. What do you make of the Congress party's resolution? Some have praised it, some have been rather scathing, some are doubtful if all of this can be achieved. Do you believe there is some fresh thinking, or do you believe a lot of the ideas are recycled ones?
There is zero fresh thinking in the economic agenda of the Congress. It is the same old thing. It's not even old wine in new bottle. It's old wine in old bottle. Just because it's been reissued and you said these are the challenges and these are the things we're going to do, there is not a single worthwhile proposal that has not already been tried and not already failed. Whether it's trying to do something for farms, the same old ideas. I mean, you will say you're going to have a loan waiver or you're going to pay higher prices thing. Where is you're talking about farm economics? There is no such thing. You have talked about jobs, there is nothing there. You're going to create a cess on some top 1%, which means everybody, including you and me. We are the top 1%. So where are they going to talk about? They talk about the middle class, and actually everybody is going to be taxed. Actually, I think nothing will balance in this economic program. This is just a pre-election proposal which sounds very nice. Everything sounds nice. You'll say you're going to free the small sector. You're going to, why didn't you do it in the last 10 years? Nothing happened actually. So let's be clear. There is nothing new in this. It's not going till we have the specifics and the details and how we are going to make all the numbers match and the fiscal deficit. Remember, the Congress's biggest failure was fiscal failure, because they couldn't match the budget in the end in the last 10 years. Despite high growth, jobs were lower. Right. And the NDA's failure is that they made 3-4 big mistakes. We'll talk about that later, but right now the agenda is nothing new.
Okay, you're not impressed at all by this economic resolution of the Congress party. Swami, let me get your comments before we take it to the politicians on the panel. One would argue, Swami, and to play the devil's advocate, that there is at least a difference in language, in the way they are approaching this issue. For example, the reference to the fact that, talk of sustained growth as the only way to alleviate poverty. There's a clarion call to win back economic freedom for entrepreneurs. This is the kind of language that one typically doesn't expect from a Congress resolution. To that extent, would you call it a welcome change?
Frankly, if you really strain yourself, you can read something new. But I would agree with Jaggi that broadly speaking, this is a party with no new ideas, basically banking on anti-incumbency. So wherever there is an opportunity to criticize, they will criticize, and they claim that we will solve it. And to me, there is no clarity whatsoever on how exactly they are going to solve it and how they are going to then square that with the fiscal issue that again Jaggi referred to. I mean, I can give promises of loan waivers, but you know, loan waivers have already been given in so many states. It's been given in UP, in Punjab, in Karnataka, in Maharashtra. You can extend it to some other people. Then the question is, you know, the RBI has come out with a flat statement that this is not the way to proceed. We also have a system, I mean, I was looking at the NPAs of the agricultural sector. The NPAs have risen from 2% back in 2009 to about 6% in 2017. And this unquestionably is because of the idea that let's give a loan waiver, let's give a loan waiver, let's give an interest-free loan. The idea of how do I buy votes, even if it is at the expense of the banking system. And if the banking system is in a mess, then blame Nirav Modi or blame somebody else or Mallaya, as though these guys appeared out of the woodwork only when Mr. Narendra Modi were here, and as though they were not all of them there in the Congress time also. So as far as I can see, this is a pretty bankrupt new statement. I think whoever put it together should be ashamed that he couldn't even, I mean, Jaggi said old wine in new bottles. It looks like old wine in old bottles to me.
Okay. Swami, Jaggi, both not too impressed by the resolution, and we will look at it in a more granular manner. Are our experts being uncharitable? Is something we'll debate as well with the BJP and the Congress. But let me get in another expert before, again, we take it to Amit Malviya and Rajiv Gowda from the Congress party. I'm sure who's had a role to play in that resolution as well. Gurcharan Das, you also, I'm told, are not impressed by this resolution. Why do you believe that a resolution that talks of winning back economic freedom for entrepreneurs, that sort of the language is pretty positive? Why do you believe it's a hollow promise?
Well, I think this is a hollow promise because I believe that when it comes to the crunch, the Congress party will always trade off equity for growth. And you have to believe in growth if you believe in economic freedom. So I don't trust the Congress party to be a supporter of economic growth.
All right, one of the things that the Congress party's agenda has been criticized on by our very first speaker, Jaggi, is this 5% cess on the incomes of the top 1% rich in the country. And I want to address that elephant in the room because that has caused a lot of heartburn. That almost makes people believe that in the Congress party, profit is a bad word. To be rich, you perhaps have to be a crony capitalist. And, you know, people fear, is that the Congress's thinking? And people fear, could Congress be going behind the rich if they were to be voted back? And Rajiv Gowda, I want you to clarify. I know it's not a part of your economic agenda. Just to clarify, it's a part of the resolution moved by Amrinder Singh, the Punjab Chief Minister on Agriculture. But why have it in the first place? Because this is going to fuel fear in the minds of Indian industry, in the minds of that 1% rich in the country. You perhaps can't, you know, the rich can't subsidize the poor. There has to be equity, yes, but not of this kind.
Supriya, the basic challenge is that inequality in the country has been rising tremendously, and we need to do something about that. We are actually going to focus on the other dimension, which is bringing growth and equity together. When we talk about unleashing the power of the micro, small and medium enterprise sector, it's about ensuring that there is more value created there, more jobs are created there, and in the process, equity also develops as well, because that's where a lot of young and fresh entrepreneurs, the larger informal sector. Remember, these are the sectors that have been badly hurt under the NDA government. The demonetization, practically destroyed these sectors, and especially huge job-creating sectors like leather and textiles and construction. You saw GST having, the hasty, dramatic implementation of GST also had this tremendously bad impact in terms of people choosing to go with the formal sector companies rather than the MSMEs, who are who are so vital to the larger economic growth story of the country, but have been essentially left out, have had to face, imports have risen, in fact, including from China, without, internal suppliers being chosen because they are not able to give a GST, tax certificate and things like that. So basically, our thrust is to ensure that we bring up the bottom, we ensure that jobs are created, that equity and growth happen at the same time. And if our learned panel here, very respected economists and commentators, cannot see that and are constantly talking about old wine, this is not old wine by any means. This is basically a fresh approach to going after the growth engines of the country and to giving them that fillip that they need and ensuring that there will be transformation across the board.
Rajiv Gowda, if I may interrupt you, I have a quick follow-up. Rajiv Gowda, if I may please interrupt you, I have a quick follow-up to you only. Is there acknowledgement, Rajiv Gowda, if I may interrupt you, is there acknowledgement within the party that the entitlement-based policies that were the flagship, that were the cornerstone of your economic thinking, at least in UPA 2, have failed, and it's time to revisit that, and which is why we're seeing language like what we're seeing today, sustained growth only means to alleviate poverty, freeing up economic and the private enterprise. Is there at least acknowledgement of the fact that you need to now relook at economic policy?
See, Sandeep, I used to be a professor, and so I need to correct you. These are not entitlement-based policies. These are empowerment-based policies. These were focused on arming people with rights, which would enable them to ensure that essentials of life were provided to them, like jobs, like healthcare, like education, etc. And these are fundamental to human capital development, to ensure that people have the wherewithal to unleash their potential in various dimensions. And so there is nothing to call this as entitlement-based policies. These are empowerment-based, rights-based policies. And a social safety net is essential in any country. The last thing you want as the numbers of people increase is for large numbers of people to say that we are falling behind, the market doesn't care for us, and there's no one to take care of us. They'll be out on the streets, and none of your business will happen. Basically, the country will slow down even further. It's an important investment in people and their capabilities when you invest in human capital, when you empower them with rights, and when you ensure that they too feel that they have a stake in the larger growth story of the country. I was going to continue on the issue of rural India. Rural India has about 50% of the population living off about 15% of the nation's wealth. This is inequality that has been worsening over time. Urbanization. Let me just finish, Supriya. In one sentence, I'll finish. Rural India is the is the arena where tremendous growth can be unleashed, and that's going to be one of our central focus.
Absolutely, and that will be a central focus of this debate as well. Has enough been said about rural India? Has the government failed? Government of the day failed the farmers? We'll come across all of that in just a bit. But Amit Malviya, I want to come to you. Is the BJP nervous about this alternative economic agenda that has been offered? And before you say no, there is a question that I want to ask you. Why is it that it took none other than the defense minister of the country to come out there and rebuff the Congress's agenda, to counter it? Because there are a lot of commentators out there who say, there's not enough that differentiates the two. And yet you did not have a spokesperson address a press conference, but none other than the defense minister herself. Are you not nervous then?
Supriya, first of all, let me just focus on the economic document that the Congress put out. It's a toxic document full of contradictions. And if that document and the policies that it has talked about were ever to be implemented, there would be no one person rich in this country who the Congress can tax and build whatever fund they were talking about. And that's the reality of the document. They have not said anything new in their document. However, that was more of a document which they used to criticize the NDA government's policies, although without substance, and not offer any new alternative. I mean, what is it that they have talked which is different? And I kept hearing Sandeep say that the language was different. Has Congress reduced the expectation from them so low that we must celebrate a change in language which is again unsubstantiated and does not have enough meat in it to even warrant a discussion around it? I heard Professor Gowda talk about the rural sector. I heard him talk about empowerment and entitled-based policies. I want to remind him and your viewers that there's been a lot of thrust in the past few days about agriculture. And look at the facts of it. The Swaminathan Committee was constituted under the NDA in 2004. It submitted its report in 2006. Until 2014, it was gathering dust. Eventually, we implemented it, and today, MSP across all products is at least 40 to 50% higher than what it was under the UPA. Not just the MSP, even the offtake that is happening currently in this government is far higher than what was happening under the UPA. For instance, oilseed cotton is being procured as much as 417% more than what it was under the UPA. So what farmer welfare are they talking about? Is farmer welfare all about creating infrastructure or about getting farm economy in place? Is it about deregulating your APMC? Is it about putting a market intervention fund, or is it about putting a mechanism where you can have support price mechanism put in? What is it all about? Is it about addressing logistics, or is it about saying, oh, we need to give more farm loan waivers? Really, the Congress has not come out even with innovative solution and how they are going to address this logistics, even though they have not done so in the last 70 years that they have been in power, almost 70 years.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And
But
if you
let me interrupt you there on that point of
the
agriculture,
NDA
because you know, at the end of the day, what matters is, and you cannot deny the fact that there is acute rural distress. What matters is your track record in the agriculture sector is very poor at an average growth rate of 2.4%. So you don't have much to write home about. But let me take it to Jaggi. Jaggi, on the issue of agriculture, do you see any difference in economic thinking of the BJP and the Congress? I mean, you know, the BJP is now being forced to go back to the Congress type policies of, you know, MSP plus cost plus MSP. The central government may not have considered a farm loan waiver, but various state governments of the BJP, including now in Maharashtra, are being forced to either announce massive waivers or relook at already announced farm loan waivers. So, is there any difference at all?
Absolutely not. In fact, all these same old silly ideas which will not even alleviate farm distress for more than 6 months are coming back. They will ruin the fiscal balance not only at the center but at all the states. It will set back growth, because the chief economic advisor has already said that if you're going to write off 2 lakh crores, and if the Congress government next year is going to write off even more money, you're going to lose at least 0.5% of growth due to just farm loan waivers. Then if you keep having a farm economy which depends on a cost plus formula, no business in the world can survive on the basis of a 50% cost plus formula. The margins have to come from greater economies of scale, so that your cost actually comes down, not that your price has to go up. I mean, no business works on the basis that I will keep increasing my price at 50% of whatever is my cost. I mean, and if you want to give a farm loan waiver, it has to be selective. Like, you can say that, okay, I am going to give restructured asset for Bhushan Steel because he is in trouble, but you can't give it, if you give that in industry and say all industries will get loan waiver. If you do a selective farm loan waiver with people who, let's say, actually have a problem repaying loans due to circumstances beyond their control, I can understand. But if you are doing a blanket loan waiver, it is a silly thing. I mean, so I think we have to do, you have already a banking system that is very stressed, and on top of that, if you are going to do a loan waiver like this, which farmer in his right mind will ever pay a loan if he is, still has some dues left? He will hold back. Now, Rahul Gandhi has ensured that the banking system will suffer some more, just when we thought we are getting some sense back into it through the NCLT process, the IBC process. Now we have set everything back, and for the next 1 year we are going to be in deep trouble, as every aspect of the economic data will go worse.
Okay, I'll get Rajiv Gowda to counter some of what Jaggi's observations are. And Jaggi and Mr. Gowda, Jagannathan has really said that the Congress party is going back to talking about farm loan waivers, which does not just disrupt credit discipline, it is also going to perhaps prolong the NPA problem that India is already facing. And to him, the agriculture solutions put forward by you don't really merit impression.
Actually, there's one thing which Jaggi said that I agree with, just one, and that is that we need to lower costs. And that is exactly what, for example, my Congress government in Karnataka has done. We have come up with a variety of innovative programs, for example, rentals of farm equipment, which ensure that costs of production go down tremendously. We have also come up with an electronic marketplace, which has now been adopted as an ENAM by the central government as well. And we've come up with a variety of micro irrigation schemes, which also ensure that the treasured commodity of water is also going to be used as carefully as possible. And with drip irrigation, you can also do very, very targeted involvement of fertilizer and other materials that would help improve productivity. Now, logistics and other factors are also going to be part of the larger story here. And the larger approach here is that credit is one of the challenges for farmers, and we need to make sure that they do not suffer from a lack of credit. Now go back to some of the things that Mr. Malviya was talking about, and that had to do with how much has already been happening. If so much has been happening, why are real incomes for farmers stagnant for the last 4 years under the Modi Sarkar? If he considers farmers improving their income as toxic, if he considers rural productivity and growth as toxic, then that is indicative of the mindset of this government, which is they want to cozy up with crony capitalists and allow them to run away from the country with our nation's money. Let them fix that, and then of course we can talk about farm loan waivers and things like that, which are essentially required to ensure that farmers can cope with the exigencies of market outcomes. There are many other things, other interventions, which Mr. Rahul Gandhi talked about, for example, food parks, because value addition, the more that you can retain with the farmer, all these kinds of initiatives will go out there. So you have to lower the costs, you have to ensure that
let me interrupt you.
Much more productivity happens and that value addition can happen. There is also an import.
Rajiv, let me interrupt you. I need to get a word from Amit Malviya very quickly. Rajiv, you made a specific point there, saying that the track record is poor for 4 years. Nothing has happened as far as farm incomes is concerned. The Prime Minister says he wants to double farm income by 2022. Amit Malviya, your counter to the specific point made there by Rajiv Gowda. Amit Malviya, your response.
Quickly, I'll start with the food park, which seems to be Rahul Gandhi's favorite project. 42 of them were approved in 2008. None were delivered till 2014. Even the food park in Amethi did not come up. We have since developed 10 of them and 5 are on their way. So that really speaks for Congress's track record. As far as some of the initiatives that Professor Gowda spoke about in Karnataka, I'm glad that he's at least picked up all that central government had to offer, whether it was soil health card, whether it was ENAM or drip irrigation or check dam. Remember, Prime Minister Modi, when he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, he did all of this and he's been implementing this at the center. And glad that Karnataka has picked up, even though they've made a mess of implementing it, because 3,721 farmers have committed suicide in Karnataka under Siddaramaia's watch. That is really Professor Gowda's government's track record in Karnataka. I need not say much on it. Now let me come to the income inequality bit that the Congress talks quite eloquently about. Between 2010 and 2014, the 90% of the people, their income or wealth grew by 3.75%, as compared to the period 2014 and 2018 till recently, when the same base grew at about 12.4%. So clearly income inequality reduced much faster under the NDA, and in fact those at the bottom of the pyramid saw their wealth growing much faster. Now if you read the Congress's draft document on it, they've quoted a study which is till 2014, and 2014 reflects the duration when UPA was in power, and that's how inconsistent and ill thought through their document is.
No, this is not a discussion on income inequality. We cannot do this at this point in time. Amit Malviya, just hold your thoughts there. This isn't a discussion on income inequality right now. I want to move focus to the GST, because the Congress party has said this time and again, but it's now as a part of the economic agenda. And Swami, the Congress party has not just criticized what it calls a clumsy implementation of the GST, but has also criticized the multiple slabs and multiple rates that are on with the GST. And it says it will go with a single rate of 18%, a demerit rate, and one lower slab rate. Is it feasible at all? Do you believe this is a Jumla, or do you believe this can be an actionable agenda?
No, I think it's a perfectly good suggestion, but it's not up to Mr. Modi to do it. It's up to the chief ministers. which, I mean, there are not that many Congress chief ministers left, but I haven't heard of Congress chief ministers in the council of ministers, within the GST council raising their voice on this particular thing. If they do, it will be a good thing. I mean, I certainly think we do need to have one standard rate. One standard rate of 18%, I think, would be quite right. Simplifying GST is very necessary. All of that, I think, is common ground. The Congress party may have suggested it, but I would say Arvind Subramanian himself has also suggested we need to move. I think Jaitley has said, we need to move towards one standard rate. So there's a consensus on this, that GST has a number of glitches. It needs to be simplified. The implementation needs to be improved. I think we've agreed on that. I don't think this is one area where the Congress is going to get a single vote over the BJP, because ultimately it's the GST Council that makes these decisions. It is not something imposed by the central government. So the GST Council can work it out, and I think the direction in which we are going is what the Congress party wants it to go in that direction.
Gurcharan Das, you've been quite, let me get your views in on the GST. Is it a make or break? I mean, is the problem with GST the poor implementation or the multiplicity of rates? And in a country like India, given the vast nature of products, I mean, is it possible to have one standard rate and just one demerit rate? I mean, is that feasible at all? And is the problem the rate or the manner of implementation? Gurcharan Das.
The Congress has a good point. There should have been only one rate, and this can be achieved. And the rate should not be higher than 18%. Congress is right in that respect also. But what I do believe though is that at least this government has brought the GST into life. If we had waited for the Congress, we would have been waiting for another 15-20 years. So at least they have brought, if it's a flawed GST, fine, but it has come. Now the thing is to fix it, and every day they are fixing it.
Mr. Gowda, I want you to respond to what both Swami and Mr. Das have said. Politically, it wasn't going to be feasible to have one rate. And the other point is that there seems to be a bit of a political opportunism here as well, because the Congress party's chief ministers are very much a part of the GST Council that decided on the rate structure eventually. So the Congress today can't wash its hands of the multiple rate structure because your chief ministers were on board. That's point number one. And point number two is political accommodation and political compulsions would have ensured you could not roll out the GST with just one rate. We waited for 10, 11 years for the GST to roll out. So what is your defense then?
Well, why did we have to wait so many years? Mr. Das also knows, because Mr. Modi and a variety of other BJP chief ministers opposed the GST and its introduction. Somehow they had a change of heart when they came into office, and they had a cooperative Congress which essentially argued before the law was passed, before the tax rates were discussed and by the GST Council, that we should have a maximum of 18%. We should have exactly what you talked about, one demerit rate and one lower rate as well. And that is something that was not paid attention to. This was something that we wanted to even bring into the actual law itself when we passed the constitutional amendment. Now, within the GST Council, the processes are such that there is a lot of working towards consensus. And that's why when you see an outcome which suggests that everyone was on board, it is a result of discussion and debate, and basically then going along with the majority view, which as of now happens to be a BJP majority view. They run many states, and they run the vast majority of states, and essentially have 66% of the vote from the central government. So the point is that many of these things, the chaos that was unleashed could have been avoided. Just before the Gujarat election, you saw the government, very, very active in the GST Council, announcing changes in the rates on kakra and various other stuff, which was just aimed at the Gujarat election. Much of this could have been avoided. The devastation unleashed on the MSME sector, could have been avoided. Why did we see? Basically, when you think about, for example, demonetization and hasty GST implementation, these cost the the economy
Right,
tremendous, a couple of percent of growth. And
Rajiv,
that
I don't think anyone is going to
2-3
dispute
lakh
the
crores of
implementation.
lost income,
Right.
lost opportunity,
Sure,
dashed
sure.
hopes, and yeah, but
I
you
don't
know,
think
so what
anyone's got- Rajiv,
you
let me
call
interrupt
that
you. I need to
economic
take a very quick
management?
break. I don't think
You know,
anyone
you
is
call that-
disputing the implementation. My entire panel, except for Amit Malviya, will probably agree that implementation could have been better. We were debating whether rates was a big issue or not. Let me just interrupt you there, Rajiv Gowda. I need to take a very quick. I need to take a very quick break. There's much that I need to discuss on the other side of this break as well, including the comments of the Congress Party as far as public sector is concerned. I'm trying to look for positive things, and I think there's something positive in the language when it comes to its outlook towards the public sector. As there also, what about jobs, manufacturing? We'll debate all of that when we come back after this very short break from the India Development Debate. Stay with us. Back with ET now. This is the India Development Debate. We are putting the spotlight on the Congress's economic resolution that was passed at the All India Congress Committee meeting over the weekend. Jaggi, we've got much ground to cover, but we can't not talk about about the banking space, and there is a fair amount of newsprint that's been given to the banking space and the mess that it is now in. Though one would argue what is the origin of the mess, but let's leave that aside. Do you sense that both the BJP and the Congress are unwilling to take tough decisions when it comes to the banking sector? Forget about privatization. Neither the BJP nor does this resolution in any sense talk about paring down government stake in state-owned banks, reforming governance in state-owned banks. That just doesn't seem to be the agenda point of both the BJP and the Congress. Why is that so?
Well, the fact is that no government so far has shown any kind of interest in reforming the banking sector, to the extent that you at least now have a loan resolution process in place. I think the BJP has done something, but neither the Congress nor the BJP has the guts to start changing the laws which will allow you to privatize. You have to shrink the private banking, the public banking sector from 65 to 70% of the banking system to something like 30 to 35%. That is when it will be viable and competitive. At 70%, it has no incentive to change because it dominates the sector and it sinks the taxpayers' money, and that's what's going to happen. And 1 year before an election, neither party is going to talk about privatization because they think it is a vote loser, because 500,000 bank employees will be out on the street if you talk about privatization. So I think neither party has the courage to say this. I would say that they have to do it in stages. Right now what is really happening is that you are having the Air India process where the private sector dominates the aviation and Air India has to be sold at a rupee or less. This is what will happen with at least 10 or 15 public sector banks if we continue like this for another 3 or 4 years. If you don't privatize, you are going to be in deep trouble. And I don't think this government has the legislative support in the Rajya Sabha to actually push through privatization. And Congress is not going to support it because it's an election year.
Right. I don't know if it's just about having the required numbers in the Rajya Sabha, or is this also about political will and the courage to do so? Because Amit Malviya, just to talk to you about what banking has been shaped like in the last 4 years. Yes, you've brought about a bankruptcy code. Yes, you have a fugitive offenders bill. Yes, you're talking about forensic audit of NPAs, passport details. But guess what all of this is doing? This is counterproductive, because this is leading into collateral damage of the kind that one hasn't seen. People expect there to be a credit freeze. People expect there to be a fear psychosis. So instead of taking the obvious reforms in banking, the kinds that Jaggi referred to, which is paring down government stake, which is making banks independent, letting go of control, you are resorting to things which people will say are mere optics.
Supriya, you have to look at how the banking sector was when we took over. The NPAs were projected at about 36%. When we did a deep dive, we found out in 2017 that they were as high as 82%. The banking sector needed infusion of capital. We put in 2 lakh crores. All of that has been done. Unless we nurse back these banks to reasonable health, there's no way we can do anything about it. That's point number one. Point number two is that we have shown intent in privatizing Air India. And we are determined to take it past because we believe that it is the right time and we must stop sinking taxpayers' money, and the government is working assiduously towards it. And therefore, unless we have tightened banking norms, which we've done through the Insolvency Banking Code and the NCLT, which are great reforms, by the way. You know, there have been cases which are now getting resolved. There are companies who are coming out of NPA situation. They are back to opening shops and so on and so forth. And so the economic revival is starting to happen. Look at 2014, the kind of gloom that was there. Do you see that kind of gloom today? But to expect us to do everything in the 3.5, 4 years that we've been around is a bit unfair on us. But you can't question on us, on our intent, on our commitment and the steps that we've taken, and all of them are in the right direction.
Rajiv Gowda, I'm not going to ask you on NPA. We've got, like I said, much ground to cover, and let's talk about jobs. And because let me make it easier for you in that sense, right? And I appreciate the intent to help create jobs and unleash the animal spirits in the private sector. My panel doesn't agree with me, but I believe that at least as far as the language is concerned, it's a welcome change. But here's what I'm worried about. While you acknowledge that there are no manufacturing jobs, while you acknowledge that much needs to be done to revive manufacturing, part of the reason there are no manufacturing jobs, part of the reason that we haven't seen that revival in the manufacturing sector is because of the lack of factor market reforms, because we haven't seen land reforms and labor reforms, and the land reforms that were initiated by this government were stalled thanks to the opposition of the Congress party. So in the absence of that, how do you realistically expect a revival in the manufacturing sector and jobs being created?
Well, the land reform issue, we have gone out there and passed the Land Acquisition Act. There are many commentators on this panel who are strongly opposed to that, but we believe that it is important that the process of land acquisition ensures that land losers are compensated appropriately and adequately, and so that's a different matter altogether. Now, basic point here is that the MSME sector needs various kinds of inputs, various kinds of the kinds of support in the areas where there are gaps. For example, marketing support, training in, even in entrepreneurship in different ways, all kinds of other investments and handholding, etc., which will help them ensure that they don't remain small, that they will be able to become job creators. The other aspect of job creation for us is also rural economy and the public sector. In rural India, as services grow and start reaching and we get into a more complex economy, we will see much more in the nature of growth in rural non-farm jobs. You will see, for example, if public sector delivery of services in healthcare and education, harnessing technology improves in a very, very significant way, then again we will be able to get newly trained people capable of doing amazing things in terms of ensuring that those who are being left behind will have access to adequate nutrition, education, healthcare, etc. So this is across the board. Then of course there's a whole sustainability agenda with regard to water and energy and the kinds of jobs that can be created in those domains. So job creation is a much larger platform and a much larger canvas than just focusing only on MSMEs, but we are, and that's something that we want to emphasize. We do believe that the entrepreneurial energies of India will, in the private sector also, and especially in the private sector, will play a very significant role in unleashing job creation and growth going forward.
Okay. All right, Swami, I want you to come in on jobs, and jobs perhaps will be this government's Achilles heel. The Congress party is trying to mount a big, make this into a bigger political issue as well. But, the reality, and a lot of people, like Sandeep pointed out there, believe is that the land and the labor reforms have arrested job creation. And perhaps if those two reforms had rolled out, we would have seen more job creation. Do you essentially agree with the hypothesis? And do you believe these are two big factors that are stalling job creation?
Yes, they are contributory factors. Without doubt, one reason why we are not competing is that we have relatively high land prices, relatively high labor prices, and relatively high interest costs. And if all those three are high compared with your neighbors, obviously you're going to find it difficult to compete. The land acquisition bill, whatever its intentions, one of the side effects appears to have been to have raised the price of land. Whether it was intended to do that or not, to the point where it has become a disadvantage. On top of that, if you have the kind of policies that were followed earlier, including very, very sharp increases in the minimum support price that took place under UPA, one consequence is high inflation. If you have high inflation, you're going to become a high-cost economy and your interest rates are going to be high. So that again affects your export competitiveness. And finally, on labor, the Congress Party's latest resolution shows no sign of wanting to reform the labor laws. I don't see the BJP going particularly strongly ahead on that particular area either. And the consequence is that our wages right now are much higher than that of, shall we say, neighboring Bangladesh, which therefore is able to completely overtake us in things like garments and even export garments into India, duty-free, affecting the local market. So yes, we need to get down our factor costs. That is an important part of the exercise. Equally, I have to say, you have to improve the ease of doing business, the procedures of various kinds. You need to improve the cost of our logistics. I mean, we still have one of the highest electricity prices in the world, 3 times the price of China in some cases. Why? Because high electricity prices for industry are being used to subsidize farmers and some urban areas. So, okay, you may win some votes that way, but then don't pretend that it's not affecting job creation. It is. Similarly, if you're going to have very high rail tariffs, among the highest relative to passenger fares, why? Because you are using high freight rates to subsidize and have cheap passenger fares. Again, if you think you're going to win a few votes, fine. But please be clear that these are the things that make you uncompetitive in manufacturing. If you're uncompetitive in manufacturing, it affects the number of jobs created.
Okay, so you're saying you need to focus on competitiveness in manufacturing and not enough has been done as far as the policy thrust there is concerned. Jaggi, very quickly, do you sense, I know you're calling it old wine in new bottle, but do you sense a change in position of the Congress Party when it comes to the public sector? For instance, the resolution makes a case for state ownership only in 4 sectors, which is defense production, mass transportation, natural resources and financial services. So I wonder, does that mean that the Congress Party is open to, strategic divestment of a BSNL, or an MTNL? I mean, are we looking at sectors outside of these 4 sectors where the Congress Party for the first time is acknowledging scope for strategic divestment? Do you see that as a welcome change, Jaggi?
Well, if it means that these are the only 4 sectors in which you want the public sector, and it implies that in all other sectors you're going to get out of the business, then it's a welcome change. But they have not gone around and said what they needed to be said, that look, we are going to privatize BSNL, we are going to back the privatization of Air India, we are going to privatize even half of Coal India or whatever it is. We can keep a substantial part in the public sector, whether it is energy sector or whatever it is, but we are going to privatize most of it. But they haven't said that. So which means that they don't have to deliver on anything. I mean, it's actually a completely obfuscatory kind of statement where what is left unsaid is what is important and what has been said is what you already know. So why do you think it's something different? I mean, we are seeing something new in it only because of some shift in some words here and there. But if you wanted that kind of shift, you could have given the drafting to Shashi Tharoor. You would have used words which we have not heard before.
Sandeep, can I come in there, please?
Okay, very quickly, Amit Malviya, very quickly.
Sandeep, I need to take this debate back to the jobs scenario, and I had a point to make there, because I think there is a lot of misinformation about job creation in this country. The fact is that there is a job for everyone who needs one in this country. What is probably missing is the data on those jobs. There isn't a credible index to measure employment in our country, which is a legacy issue which is being addressed, and therefore to say that there is jobless growth is not quite right. Secondly, there has been a research done by a professor at IIM Bangalore and at RBI which says that 70 lakh jobs were created, and these are numbers that have come from the PF system. This is the same system that the UPA one used to claim that they create 2 million jobs. So let's be fair about how we are going about it. More importantly, this government has very clearly maintained that we are more keen on seeing that an entrepreneurial ecosystem comes about, and Mudra loan has given about 9+ crore beneficiaries. And that's creating a lot of job
Right. I just hope,
opportunities
Amit
and
Malviya, I
employment
get
for
your
people.
point there.
And
Amit
therefore, it
Malviya.
is important to put it in context.
All right. Amit Malviya, I'm sorry, I'll have to interrupt you rather harshly. I get your point there, but I can't let you continue because I'm really running out of time on this edition and I haven't gone to Mr. Gurucharan Das, so I'll let him have the final word quickly right now. And so is 2019, Mr. Das, going to be all about the economy? Because on the one hand, that will put pressure on the government to get good economy in good shape. Or will it all boil down to caste configurations, the alliance arithmetic and all of that?
Well, I don't think it will be all about the economy because one, Modi has not delivered the jobs. So BJP is not going to tom-tom the economy. At the same time, I think if Congress pushes the economy button, the fact is the economy is still doing reasonably well. It's now above 7%. By the time 2019 comes around, you will be close to 8%. And so there will be the economy is not in serious trouble. It was in a much worse situation between 2011 and 2014. The economy went from 8.5% to 4.5%. That's a huge drop. 1% drop in economic growth rate is 1.5 million direct jobs. Each job creates 3 indirect jobs. That's 6 million jobs. Each job supports 5 people. That's 30 million people. 3 crore people suffer when your economy drops by 1% growth. And our economy dropped by 4 percentage points. So it was in a terrible shape. I would say I still don't think that BJP has done a job which I would give A, but it has done a B job. It has been prudently managed. The fiscal deficit is under control. If I had been in Mr. Modi's place, I would have pushed jobs from day number 1, which is what he promised. So Achhe Din have not arrived, and therefore the BJP will not push the economic angle as their great achievement.
All right, Rajiv Gora, we'll let you have a quick last word then, and completely out of time. Do you agree with Gurucharan Das that for the BJP it may have not done a stellar job, but things will be a lot better as you go into 2019? This 7% will perhaps pick up to 8%, and will you have a rhetoric to sell really? Things are not as bad as the Congress party may want it to be or project it to be.
See, we would love for the economy to do well. But Mr. Das has forgotten that after 2008, there was a global financial crisis. And that is what slowed down the entire global economy, and we did fine compared to the rest of the world. Here, all the losses in jobs and income and the number of people hurt, that is something that happened in India deliberately due to the miscalculations and economic disaster unleashed by one man, Narendra Modi. And that is something that we will go to the people on and ask them, do you want to go with a person and a party which unleashed this kind of devastation on you, who never fulfilled any of the promises that he made in 2014?
Okay, fair enough.
That will suffice to get people to understand who to vote for going forward.
Let the voters decide. I am completely timed out. Amit Malviya, Rajiv Gowda, Swaminathan Iyer, R. Jagannathan, Gurucharan Das, can't thank you enough. All I can say is, if 2019 is all about economy, well, there can be nothing better. We'd rather have the focus of 2019 being the economy and only the economy, because that's what policymakers and politicians need to focus on to get growth back on track. Supriya?
Indeed, and growth, like they say, is that tide that lifts all boats, and if growth does happen, so will social equity, and we would want it to be a more socially equitable environment as far as India is concerned. This is an alternate economic agenda. The key to this will be delivery. The key to this will be, can they make it a reality, or will the BJP come tearing in to say this is yet another Jumla? On that note, completely out of time here on the India Development Debate. We come back with Top 10 at 10. Tanya Bharadwaj takes this forward.